Section 28. And be it further enacted, that the provisions of the Act entitled An Act respecting fugitives from justice, and persons escaping from the service of their masters, approved February 12, 1793, and the provisions of the Act entitled An Act to amend and supplementary to the aforesaid Act, approved September 18, 1850, b. and the same are hereby declared to extend to and be in full force within the limits of the said territory of Kansas. Section 29. And be it further enacted, that there shall be appointed an attorney for said territory, who shall continue in office for 4 years, and until his successor shall be appointed and qualified, unless sooner removed by the President, and who shall receive the same fees and salary as the attorney of the United States for the present territory of Utah. There shall also be a marshal for the territory appointed, who shall hold his office for 4 years, and until his successor shall be appointed and qualified, unless sooner removed by the President, and who shall execute all processes issuing from the said courts, where exercising their jurisdiction as circuit and district courts of the United States, he shall perform the duties, be subject to the same regulations and penalties, and be entitled to the same fees as the Marshal of the District Court of the United States for the present territory of Utah, and shall, in addition, be paid $200 annually as a compensation for extra services. Section 30. And be it further enacted, that the Governor, Secretary, Chief Justice, and Associate Justices, Attorney, and Marshal, shall be nominated, and, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, appointed by the President of the United States. The Governor and Secretary to be appointed as aforesaid shall, before they act as such, respectively take an oath or affirmation before the district judge, or some justice of the peace in the limits of said territory, duly authorized to administer oaths and affirmations by the laws now in force therein, or before the Chief Justice, or some Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, to support the Constitution of the United States, and faithfully to discharge the duties of their respective offices, which said oaths, when so taken, shall be certified by the person by whom the same shall have been taken, and such certificate shall be received and recorded by the said Secretary among the executive proceedings, and the Chief Justice and Associate Justices, and all other civil officers in said territory, before they act as such, shall take a like oath or affirmation before the said Governor or Secretary, or some judge or justice of the peace of the territory, who may be duly commissioned and qualified, which said oath or affirmation shall be certified and transmitted by the person taking the same to the Secretary, to be by him recorded as aforesaid, and, afterwards, the like oath or affirmation shall be taken, certified, and recorded, in such manner and form as may be prescribed by law. The Governor shall receive an annual salary of $2,500. The Chief Justice and Associate Justices shall receive as an annual salary of $2,000. The Secretary shall receive an annual salary of $2,000. The said salaries shall be paid quarter-yearly from the dates of the respective appointments at the Treasury of the United States, but no such payment shall be made until said officers shall have entered upon the duties of their respective appointments. The members of the Legislative Assembly shall be entitled to receive $3 each per day during their attendance at the sessions thereof, and $3 each for every 20 miles travel, in going to and returning from the said sessions, estimated according to the nearest usually travel route, and an additional allowance of $3 shall be paid to the presiding officer of each house, for each day he shall so preside, and a chief clerk, one assistant clerk, a sergeant-at-arms, and doorkeeper may be chosen for each house, and the chief clerk shall receive $4 per day, and the said other officers $3 per day, during the session of the Legislative Assembly, but no two other officers shall be paid by the United States, provided that there shall be but one session of the legislature annually, unless, on an extraordinary occasion, the Governor shall think proper to call the legislature together, there shall be appropriated annually the usual sum to be expended by the governor to defray the contingent expenses of the territory, including the salary of a clerk of the executive department, and there shall also be appropriated annually a sufficient sum to be expended by the secretary of the territory, and upon an estimate to be made by the secretary of the Treasury of the United States, to defray the expenses of the legislative assembly, the printing of the laws, and other incidental expenses. And the governor and secretary of the territory shall, in the disbursement of all moneys entrusted to them, be governed solely by the instructions of the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, and shall, semi-annually, account to the said Secretary for the manner in which the aforesaid monies shall have been expended, and no expenditure shall be made by said legislative assembly for objects not specially authorized by the acts of Congress making the appropriations, nor beyond the sums thus appropriated for such objects. Section 31. And be it further enacted that the seat of government of said territory is hereby located temporarily at Fort Leavenworth, and that such portions of the public buildings as may not be actually used and needed for military purposes may be occupied and used, under the direction of the governor and legislative assembly, for such public purposes as may be required under the provisions of this act. Section 32. And be it further enacted that a delegate to the House of Representatives of the United States, to serve for the term of 2 years, who shall be a citizen of the United States, may be elected by the voters qualified to elect members of the Legislative Assembly, who shall be entitled to the same rights and privileges as are exercised and enjoyed by the delegates from the several other territories of the United States to the said House of Representatives. But the delegate first elected shall hold his seat only during the term of the Congress to which he shall be elected. The first election shall be held at such time and places, and be conducted in such manner as the governor shall appoint and direct, and at all subsequent elections, the times, places, and manner of holding the elections shall be prescribed by law. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be declared by the governor to be duly elected, and a certificate thereof shall be given accordingly, that the Constitution and all laws of the United States which are not locally inapplicable shall have the same force and effect within the said territory of Kansas as elsewhere within the United States, except the 8th section of the Act preparatory to the admission of Missouri into the Union, approved March 6, 1820, which, being inconsistent with the principle of non-intervention by Congress with slavery in the states and territories, as recognized by the legislation of 1850, commonly called the Compromise Measures, is hereby declared inoperative and void, it being the true intent and meaning of this act not to legislate slavery into any territory or state, nor to exclude it therefrom, but to leave the people thereof perfectly free to form and regulate their domestic institutions in their own way, subject only to the Constitution of the United States, provided that nothing herein contained shall be construed to revive or put in force any law or regulation which may have existed prior to the Act of 6th of March, 1820, either protecting, establishing, prohibiting, or abolishing slavery. Section 33. And be it further enacted that there shall hereafter be appropriated, as has been customary for the territorial governments, a sufficient amount to be expended under the direction of the said governor of the territory of Kansas, not exceeding the sums heretofore appropriated for similar objects, for the erection of suitable public buildings at the seat of government, and for the purchase of a library to be kept at the seat of government, for the use of the governor, legislative assembly, judges of the Supreme Court, secretary, marshal, and attorney of said territory, and such other persons, and under such regulations as shall be prescribed by law.